Okay, well, let's rock and roll. It's April 14th at 10:06 a.m. and we're here because we are supporting all of our work as universal screening grantees. So here's how today might feel. We just did a community connector. If you just entered, we welcome you to share who you are, where you are, and an emoji of what you would do on your ideal spring and sunny day. We'll be in a moment. Tina will offer us a where we've been with our needs and asset mapping and resource mapping in this cohort. Then Christina will be leading us through a process by which a tool we can use to select and choose screening measures. And that's really a kind of a practice that we all can take, adapt, or add to if you have other ways that you've led collective decision making around selecting screening tools. We'll have time to move into our SSPs, our groups, to discuss and to share. And then CBH will be sharing about the updated planning template that you all received last night in your email. This is not a moment to go, wait, what? And scour in your email. We'll bring it up at the end of today. We'll have time to unpack it. And then we've put it at the end because the reminder is that last 30 minutes of this 2-hour block is our optional peer coaching. And that's when CBH will also stay on and we can go over some of the changes together.
Thank you, Leora. Good morning, everybody. Whether or not you've seen this, hopefully, I think most folks were on the last time. And if not, when we need a refresher, we just wanted to share with you some of the slides from Christina's teaching in the last session. And just a big reminder as well, we always have the hub ready with resources, materials, and the recordings from last session. So please be sure to jump into that in the hub and see that recording. So it goes a little bit more in depth for you. On the next slide, as a reminder, what's coming up what's today is the main session, of course, and we will explain kind of more of the flow later on, but we do have office hours coming up. So that's just next week. We'll talk about the structure of that as well as offerings still before the preliminary screening is due on May 30th. So know that. Also, for those planning out, you've got a couple of months too of sessions. So please make sure to mark your calendars too. On the next slide. What we want to do before we jump right back into reviews and into a new concept is also just take a moment to reflect on your process. What we want to ask you to do, and whether it's in the chat or if you are comfortable in unmuting, we'd love for you to reflect on your process, your universal screening process, and answer the question, what is a priority for you in selecting the right screening tool for your communities? What is most important? The priority for you in selecting the right screening tool for your communities. Take a moment to answer in chat, unmute, and always open to hear whys if you want to share that too. Alyssa, thank you. Sustainability and making sure it's affordable, right? Yeah. Affordability absolutely does help with sustainability for sure. Okay. Realistic, that it makes sense. It's feasible. And so definitely going to talk about that later. Cost and ease of use. Absolutely. Comprehensive, to reduce the need for multiple tools. Yes. All of these things speak to also considering the folks who are implementing it, the folks who are taking it, making sure, again, it's doesn't make things harder or the process harder, that it is the right fit. You're going to hear a lot of that. I know Christina's definitely going to focus on the fit. Is it doable and giving them the info they need to match students and what they need? Making sure that it's the right fit. Absolutely. There you go. Absolutely. Okay. Any last thoughts? And again, I welcome if anybody wants to share more, expand more on their answers, please do. Thank you for highlighting cultural competency. Absolutely. We talk about our communities all the time. Right fit means also considering the communities we're serving. Flexibility in choice and shared language. Aligns with data findings. Yes, bringing it back to data. And where do you get that data? So you hear a little bit of that too. Age appropriate and supportive administration of the tool. Findings allow us to adequately respond. Immediately respond. I think too, the ease of data outcome. Yes. And how to apply. Collecting all the data. What's the next step with that? And how does it, again, impact our communities? Thank you for that. Okay. Anybody want to share a why or expand more on what it is that they shared? Feel free to unmute. And if not to, we'll have that opportunity to process a little bit more in our SSPs. So very excited to break out a little bit later on today.
I mean, I'll share really quick. New to the universal screening game, as you all know, I just started in February. But even like first brushes with my district partners has been like, are you kidding me? I'm exhausted right now. It's February. Like, don't come at me with a screening proposition. And then I have to really like, okay, but it could be easy. It could be free. It could give this data that's already really accessible and you wouldn't have to do much. So I'm noticing that that's been the communication from districts thus far.
And it's a little bit of making that sale or that convincing them, but also at the same time being empathetic about where they are. So I appreciate that. And you all are acknowledging that too about right fit and making sure, again, we're not making it harder for folks, right? Because knowing where they are is important, knowing that. Thank you so much. Anybody else want to share? And
well, for us, I think I put in I did put in the data one. But for us, all of our LEAs in this grant are also in our BHSSA grant and have been focusing on suicide prevention and mental health for the last 4 years. So we have a lot of data that they have along with CHICS and then the behavioral health module, the suicide risk screening data, and then annual needs assessment data. So they're data rich, and it's been great because they've been able to look at their own data for their LEA and see what are some of the trending mental health challenges, some of the needs, the gaps, and all that. So it's nice to see that they use that data in things like considering what tool to use. So that's our example.
Love that. And I love also the fact that you're naming all of those different data sources. I think that's important too for all of us to hear about where we can pull from and how to integrate them and use them to help make the right decision for screeners. So thanks for that, Heather. And I'm seeing in the chat, how have you found, so this is a question to Heather, how have you found a balance between being data rich and data saturated? Good question.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the things that has helped is our team puts together their data in a easy to use format where we take, the 4 years of data and show where are the growth areas, where are the areas for opportunities, and put it into like an Excel sheet that they can just look at their data. And because we know LEAs don't have time to dig through their data because it would be data saturation. But yeah. I think because of our supports, we're able to put the data in a usable form for them to just take and share back with staff, share back with students. So that's, I think, a big piece of it. And just having those 3 data sources that we kind of stuck with along the 4 years of the grant, that was our expectation. Because also, like, some of them are doing peer programming for mental health and suicide prevention, and we have other data to show that as well. So we are able to kind of integrate the peer programming data with their other data to show, is there a difference here? So I guess it would be that the COE support of taking their data and giving it to them in an easy to use format. I had to think that through while I was talking. Sorry.
No, it absolutely makes sense. I love what Leora said too. in thinking about what you shared, data translation and streamlining dissemination to reduce overwhelm. And I think it links to, again, what Christina shared too. You're helping tell the story. You're making sense of and integrating, analyzing the data. So we're helping to tell that story in a way that people are willing to hear it. So wonderful. Thanks so much. Last session, we did have a chance to focus in on 3 parts, right? We were really talking about readiness as a whole, and Christina shared about needs assessment, asset assessment, and resource mapping. And so it's what you think of when we think about needs assessment. What are the issues that are happening within the system, as well as what do we anticipate or already know, whether informally or formally, about our students' needs? And then asset assessment, loving the sense of always being strength-based in this, right? What is it that's happening within our communities that we can leverage? What are those strengths? Building on existing skills, current relationships and connections with others, as well as other assets of the communities. Resource mapping. We all have resources, places in which we can connect and refer, but also how do you structure that or make it so that it's easier to connect with, that connections actually follow through. So making sure that there's a way to organize available services and identify gaps. We'll go quickly through some of the other slides. I just want to share some of what was covered last time. So on the next one, this has come up. Heather shared some examples of just where to find that data. She named them, but I think very familiar with traditional district data that's available at our fingertips, from academic achievement and discipline data to attendance, but also looking more into maybe more of the detailed and expanded district data. And so you have lists there that actually break down, for example, everything from time out of class to visits to other departments or with other professionals like our nurses and the wellness center visits. So really thinking about what other things we have access to. Heather also mentioned the CHIC survey. So those items that may take a little bit more time, but they are absolutely available. And then thinking about connections to the community and what's available there, right? From demographic data that reflects our communities. Incarceration rates. Have you thought about that? Juvenile justice, homelessness rates, and so many other sources, but really just thinking about what's outside of the districts themselves. On the next slide. This just essentially justifies, and I think you get this as well, but just our reason for being ready, right? The readiness steps and what it does provide us. And so just a reminder of being prepared absolutely is the best way to ensure that universal screening is effective, ethical, and equitable. On the next slide, it breaks down a little bit more about needs assessment. And what I'll share is when you take a look at this, just a reminder that there are, for example, activities, but where to actually gauge or find those is really, I think, the beauty of these slides. That if you're looking to, for example, look for and review patterns of chronic absenteeism or tardiness, check those attendance records. We know that, but also MTS data boards, right? Dashboards. So when you're looking for that data, right, where do you find them? And so this is a nice, again, list of maybe things you're used to and things that might be new for you to explore. The next one, as far as assets, we say strengths, but can we identify?
Can we pause? I'm just curious for the group. So part of this collaborative is also to support each other and to see where we are in the journey as we're working on our planning template. And I'm curious from last session where some of you had already implemented your needs assessment, some of you were designing it, some of you were thinking about it. I'm just curious to take a pause moment to share either in chat or out loud where you are in your needs assessment for the formation of the work. Where are you? What's working? What's not working? What are examples that you connect with? Other ways that you're gathering needs from your planning committee? Where are we in the work?
Well, our four LEAs in this grant have done the needs assessment, and we're waiting because the other 20 I'm so bad at math, 28 LEAs in our MHSSA grant are working on completing the needs assessment. So by the end of this month, we'll have data from 31 LEAs, and then we're going to work with our evaluators and condense it and look at what are the data trends and so forth. So that's where we're at.
Nice. Heather, would you offer one or two more lines around what form or what framework you were using for the needs assessment, that what kind of data that you're going to be queuing? And I'm also mapping that Martha is using the shape assessment. So I'm curious if there's a connection between the two.
Yeah, we reference shape a lot and pull pieces from that. But with Himada, help me, I'm trying to remember. So we, our team, along with our evaluators from UCSF, we really looked at different sections and questions around readiness level and, all the pieces that are also in the shape of breaking it down to, we have also a readiness checklist that it's sequential, and then it has resources and tools with each section. So similar pieces from that are pulled in, but really looking at all aspects of staffing, to the capacity to do it, choosing a tool, getting permission, it all broken down. I haven't looked at it in a while, so I can't speak to it.
I think it's the core pieces of shape. I mean, everything recommended there. So yeah.
Yeah. More to come.
And can I add for Rhiannon, hopefully I didn't butcher your name, but so the same thing happened for my districts, where all of them felt like we're so behind. We should already be in universal screening. And some of them were super advanced, where they were ready for that universal screening to jump on board and start learning which one would fit for their district. And what I've been trying to do, because we have a community of practice where they all come together and then they're working on the shape assessment, I've been trying to put in different little practices where they're learning to break down that feeling of I'm behind. So that way they're all understanding we're in this together. We're a community of practice. We're a county, and what we're trying to do is to benefit all of our community, not just the ones that are ahead, and then helping them, I guess, reduce that shame, because I think a lot of them feel shameful to even say we're struggling in this area. And we don't want to say it because we're so ahead already of everybody else, and they're looking to us as the good noodles. I don't know. So yes, definitely felt that what you said.
Okay, Najwa just entered a dissertation. Can we just drive over to Yolo for a second into your cubicle and hear from you, and then I'll hand the mic back to Tina.
Yeah, so we've done a few history mapping sessions through our Interconnected Wellness COP, and then also what we have, what we call our project implementation team through our K-12 partnership. So these sessions have been composed of directors, whether they're SPED directors, student services directors, various practitioners, so counselors, school psychs, some PBIS program specialists, as well as our CBOs. So really trying to map what screeners have been used in the past, what is currently being used, what's working, what's not working. And as a partnership across our county, we're also trying to move towards a more data-driven model. So really zeroing in on what are our collective objectives as a county, and how can we put that towards this work to find a short list of screeners, because not everything's going to work for each community. But so that we're all speaking the same language. So I touched on that a little bit more. But also to meet the needs of that collective objective. So that's where we're at. Thank you for coming to my TED.
It's a good TED Talk. It's a great one. And just so many things are highlighted through just the sharing right now that folks are intentional about listening and hearing and acknowledging that people are at different readiness levels, and acknowledging that and working with that. And the intention behind, I love that you called it history mapping lessons and giving value to the perspectives of others in their roles and what they've seen and all the changes that they've experienced within their districts or wherever it is that they are coming to us from. So amazing. We'll jump back in and we'll just a couple more slides on where we've been. The next one's on assets. And you touched on this because I hear and see you acknowledging what folks bring to the table. And so just a reminder that identifying strengths can absolutely support screening, implementation, and follow-up. Some of the examples are there. Ones you might not have thought of or that I haven't thought of. For example, the last one, identify staff with mental health, SEL, or trauma-informed training. Never think about, or maybe I stray from looking at HR records, but hey, you have the ability to access those. How wonderful. And to learn more about the different trainings that folks come with and the different skills and abilities and gifts that they're able to share with others. Absolutely a possible data source for you. The next slide is talking about the resources. And so we have them. But do folks know how to access it? So if you want to, for example, clarify referral pathways and decision rules, making sure that that's listed or talked about when we're talking about MTSS, that it's listed or there's available, links or information on referral forms, and that we do absolutely have team decision-making protocols. So just making sure that that is a part of the culture and the processes is going to be critical. And again, it helps with making timely and meaningful referrals and follow-ups. So to wrap, on the next slide, we're going to move or shift to what is really exciting here. And you've all been leading up to it, but talking about the right fit and selecting a universal screening measure. And so I'd like to pass it on to Christina to share an amazing tool that I know has really helped with so much more in her county. Thanks, Christina.
Thank you, Tina. Good morning, everyone. So you'll see the quote there, and many of the insights that you dropped into the chat already greatly speak to that. So programs and practices are only as effective as their fit within the social context in which they are implemented. So that's going to be a big highlight here. And the hope is that we'll introduce you to a tool that can help you find that right fit, and especially to have a process moving forward, whether you're adopting a new screener and this is your first adventure, or you're considering, hey, there's been some missteps. We had one that we were using. It's not effective. Maybe we need to consider something else. So next slide, please, Leora. Thank you, ma'am. First of all, I wanted to revisit. We had shared our Universal Screening Action Plan previously. We've made an update based on some updates that Boyang and Selena are going to share at the end of our call today. So I've updated this template, which was the action plan, now titled the BHSSA Universal Screening District and Site Level Implementation Checklist. This is a spreadsheet tool for you to use that is aligned with some of the expectations that Boyang and Selena will describe later today, and is aligned with our newly released best practices in universal screening for social, emotional, and behavioral outcomes. So this is the implementation guide that was just released in January of 2026. So this checklist embedded within this tool is an exact match at the district level and also at the site level. So please feel free to use this optional spreadsheet tool for your planning purposes and to align with the revised preliminary plan template that Boyang will share later today. And thank you, Tina, for dropping that in the chat. Much of what we share in this section is going to be highlighting pieces from this best practices guide as well. That was co-authored by Stephanie Moore, who you met in a previous session too. Next slide, please, Leora. All right. Did want to highlight, we have an extended learning opportunity for all of you. There is a 2-part webinar series hosted by the Western Regional Collaborative on School Mental Health, which is a group of us from California, Washington, and Nevada. that have come together in shared purpose and love of school-based mental health systems. So this 2-part webinar series, the QR code is there, and we've also dropped the link to the flyer in the chat. Part 1 will be diving deep into that best practices guide and will be led by the authors of that guide, including Stephanie Moore. Part 2 will be hearing from some state leaders from not just California, Washington, and Nevada. We're going to see who all we can gather together, but some leaders and lead implementers in this work that can share their missteps, their successes, their journey in universal screening. So please join us for that. Next slide, please. All right. Quote straight from our best practices guide here. Okay. No single universal SEB screening measure will be appropriate for all schools. States are encouraged to allow flexibility for school districts to select a technically adequate tool to specifically address the unique needs of their population. So just as we are all speaking to, sometimes it feels easy. Let's just choose a thing. We're going to apply it across the board. No, that is not best practice guidance. We really need to lean into context. What are the needs? What is the readiness? What's going to be the right fit for your school community? And that could look different even across a single district. What's right for one school site might be very different from what's the best fit for another school site. Next slide, please. All right. From that best practices guide, the section in there on tool selection guides us to consider 3 main areas when we're selecting a universal screening measurement tool. The first being technical adequacy, the second, usability and feasibility, and the third, and I say the most important, is contextual fit. What I'll be sharing next is a tool that we've utilized here in Placer County quite often through the Interconnected Systems Framework and with many of our district leadership teams to guide them in having a systematic process for selecting any new intervention, program, or practice. So we want to have a method for really analyzing all of these things. We want to move from that place of like, hey, I have a vibe. I think this is usable and feasible, or I think this is a good fit, to how do we actually know? What does the data say? And how can I compare multiple tools to know which is the best right fit for my community? So next slide, please, Leora. The hexagon tool from the National Implementation Research Network. The thumbs up or smiley face in the chat if you have heard of the hexagon tool before. I want to see who has seen this thing, done this thing. Carrie, I'm seeing thumbs up. Question marks in the chat if you're like, nope, no idea. Melissa's seen it. Yes. Leslie, thank you. All right. Patty, of course, Patty can lead this section. She loves the hexagon tool. All right. Others, if I haven't seen an emoji, I'm assuming. Okay. Christine, thank you for saying I have not heard of this. That helps me know to slow down a little bit as I share what this tool and this thing is. Great. Patty, the hexagon tool schemer. Yes, absolutely. More like guru. I don't know. She should be a leader in the hexagon tool. They should hire her. Anna Townsend. Yes. All right. So it's a hexagon tool. So how many slices do we see here? Leaning back to math. 6. Yes. Okay. 6 sides to a hexagon. Okay. So part of this tool in the green there, we have methods of really deeply analyzing things about the tool itself that we are considering selecting. So in the green, we're looking at the evidence of that tool, the support around it, and the usability. In the blue, these are looking at really the fit about your context. So the district, community, school site that you are considering implementing this screening tool in, we're going to be analyzing what is the capacity, the fit, and the need of that community, and putting that information together in a scorable method. Okay, so please move to the next slide and we'll dig a little deeper. So thinking about evidence, and I believe Tina had already dropped in the chat the hexagon tool. So this is a guide in and of itself. So I'm just showing you snapshots in slide version of what this tool looks like. So if you were to use this with a school or a district, you would provide that tool and you would engage in this scoring process of all 6 slices of this hexagon tool criteria together and come to that shared informed decision on what we believe is the best right fit. Okay, so thinking about evidence. Sometimes when we use the hexagon tool, if we're thinking about adopting a program or a practice, we might lean into things like the BHSSA criteria around evidence base of our programs or practices. But for universal screening measurement tools, we're really thinking about that psychometric evidence. So we're thinking about reliability, validity, norming samples. Has this tool been used in school populations? Was it intended for school-based use? And has it been used across diverse student groups? You'll see for all 6 slices of the hexagon tool, you're going to have a scoring measurement rubric of 1 to 5. So this is just an example of what that would look like when considering scoring for a universal screening tool around evidence specifically. That 5 being that gold standard you're looking for. So we're really looking for a well-established tool. It's been extensively researched and reviewed. It has strong reliability and validity. It's been used across diverse populations in school settings. And maybe we even see that this has been endorsed or recommended by national organizations. That's evidence. Next slide, please, Leora. Supports. So again, we're still talking about the screening tool or tools that you are considering themselves. Okay. We're in the green. This is about the screening tool. So what type of support is available for your implementation of this screening tool? So are there resources, expert guidance, training, coaching embedded into this screening tool? Okay. So is there support available for us in implementing the tool that we're considering selecting? And again, a score of 1 to 5 here, a 5 being we've got some comprehensive resources available from an expert to support implementation. Next slide, please. And usability, again, still talking about that tool itself. So how usable is this screening tool that we're considering? So is this clearly defined, operationalized? When we look at this tool, can we easily pick this up and repeat this process or use of this tool? So when we look at it, is it a little, is it a blob? Is it a little bit amorphous? We're not quite sure what to do with this. Or is this really clearly structured? We've got clear, measurable, observable information that will help support that implementation. Thank you, Patty. Yes. All right. Now we're going to move on to the blue. So those are criteria about the tool itself. Now we need to consider that fit piece. Okay. So the community that we are considering implementing within. We can go to the next slide, please, Leora. Thank you, ma'am. Thinking about need. Many of you spoke to your needs assessment. You have been gathering data along the way that is informing A, that you need a universal screener, why universal screening, and also hopefully developing some questions around this. Why are we doing this? What information do we want to find out? What are the needs of the students in our community? That helps to inform what types of questions you're going to ask when you're scoring through the hexagon tool, and also tools that you might be considering. So does data demonstrate that the tool that you're considering match the needs specifically identified in your student population? So it might be a tool that you're considering is really great at identifying certain needs criteria for certain groups, but those might be completely different needs from your school community. Here in Placer County, we have high rates of anxiety and depression. So a lot of internalizing needs and behaviors. That's really specific to us. We have concerns around self-harm, suicide ideology. So we may be looking for screeners that are really going to emphasize and identify kiddos that might be struggling with those areas. So that's what I mean by need. And same thing, that scoring rubric of 1 to 5. Do the needs match? Does data say this tool is going to support us in identifying those needs that we've revealed through our needs assessment? Go on, Leora. Thank you, ma'am. And fit. Okay, so does this align? Does the screening measure align with our local context? Okay, so when you think about our priorities, our community values, our cultural and linguistic nuances within our community, is this screening tool that we are considering going to be a good fit for that? Patty, yes. One of our districts identified executive functioning as a huge need area. Absolutely. So they want a screening tool that includes that area or domain. Perfect example, right? So when we did our intervention inventories and our data analysis, we identified some gaps, right? And so we saw a big need, but also maybe a gap was around that executive functioning. So we want to be looking at tools that are going to serve that function. Excellent. So fit, very, very important. So it might be that you have a stellar screening tool that you've heard a lot of great things about, but maybe this tool has never been tried or tested within a community that speaks our most predominant language. Or maybe this tool that we're considering has never been used or tested in an elementary setting versus a high school setting. So these are things that we really want to look at and consider. All right, next. Okay, and then capacity. This one is not to be glossed over. There are many fancy schmancy tools out there that might require a lot of human resource to implement, to analyze the data, to make meaning of this. And as we're creating our screening processes, we definitely want to make sure that we have those teaming processes in place. So it's one thing to actually hand out this screener, say, take this. Then you have the data, but now what? You have to have that infrastructure, that capacity in place to make meaning of this, analyze the data, and then respond to it in an equitable and ethical manner. So think about the tool that you're considering and the capacity of your teams who would be tasked with actually analyzing this data and using and responding to it. Do we have that capacity in place? So thinking about, do we have the qualified workforce? Do we have the financial pieces in place, the technology that we not only start to implement, but we can sustain this? So that's what that 1 to 5 looks like there. Thanks, Lyra. Next slide. All right. So just a quick little case scenario. So fictional name here, but based on a real case scenario of one of our districts here in Placer County. So this is a smaller school district, just 3 TK through 8 schools with approximately 1,400 students. You see in the left-hand column there some of their student demographics, a fairly diverse school community. We've got 50% that are lower socioeconomic status, and 15% are English language learners in this particular school community. So they've done a good job of identifying some of their needs through some intensive needs and asset mapping. They've also engaged in an intervention inventory so they know what is available and have some teaming structures in place. So like I shared before, Placer County again, so we've identified anxiety as a big concern for this community, a lot of internalizing behaviors, but we're also seeing an uptick in our externalizing behavior referrals in our upper elementary and middle school population. And they've really identified, we have a true need for earlier identification. We're being reactive, not proactive in our processes. And that's driving us to really fine tune our screening process. Now, this particular district had already adopted use of a screener. They were using SABRES as their screening tool. However, it was missing the mark. So we saw inconsistent staff participation in this. They had limited use of data for decision making, and especially their screening data was not connected to their tier 1 supports. They really want to focus on prevention. So this screening tool was not really helping them to do that. It gave us that student level information, but we weren't really making those links back to tier 1. And how do we know that this is a tier 1 concern? And how do we put those supports in place? Yes, thanks, Lyra. Exactly. And unclear decision rules for tier 2 supports. So it could be a fault of the tool, or it could be a fault of our process. We're not quite sure, but this team wants to explore in a systematic way, should I consider a new screening tool, or do I stick with SABRES and fine tune my process? So they are deciding to engage in the hexagon tool in this scenario, and they're going to compare the SRSSIE with the SABRES tool. Next slide, please. Yes. Is it the process or is it the tool? Exactly. So here's what some of their guiding questions would look like when we consider those 6 slices. So thinking about evidence, when they're scoring their hexagon tool for their consideration of their new tool, the SRSSIE, they might be asking things like, is it peer-reviewed research? Has this demonstrated effectiveness in elementary and middle school settings? Because we are a TK through 8. With supports, is training available? That's really important. That was a misstep with the Sabres. We didn't train our people. And are there implementation guides that can just quickly tell us how to create those data decision rules for use of this screener? For usability, is it quick and easy? That's super important. Is this going to be easy for our teachers to score and implement because they are the reporters in their current system? Can data be easily aggregated and used by team decision making? For need, now thinking about the context. So we identified high rates of externalizing and internalizing behaviors, more emphasis on the internalizing. So does the SRSS-IE really address those internalizing behaviors? And will it support us in identifying students earlier for Tier 2 support? When thinking about fit, this is a strong PBIS implementing district, and so we want to make sure that the SRSS-IE is aligned with our current district MTSS and PBIS framework. And does it support our district priorities around prevention and early intervention, making those connections back to Tier 1? And finally, the capacity. So through the SRSS-IE, screening is recommended to be completed 2 to 3 times per year. Do we have the capacity to do that? And does the district have staff available to review and act on screening data in a timely manner? So that's a big piece too. So they're just examples of some questions that you would create as a team to inform your scoring and consideration around this. Next slide, please. And then finally, this is how you would summarize your findings for this. And I just really want to hone in on the fact that the hexagon tool is a really effective tool, not only for considering selection of something new, but also comparing your options. If you have multiple, maybe you have a short list of screeners that you as a planning team is recommending to your districts. This could be a process that you engage your districts in to help inform their right contextual fit tool for their school community. This could also support, like the case example here, in de-implementing an ineffective screening tool that they might have been using previously. Sometimes we know something's not working, but we're not sure why. And the hexagon tool can help give us that data to tell us, here's why. Maybe it wasn't usable for us, or maybe this wasn't the right fit for our school community. So again, we want to avoid those false starts. And this is a nice systematic process that can give you some meaty data and information. And you can repeat this. This is a tool and a process that you can repeat over time as you begin to scale your universal screening practices. And now I stop. So hopefully you all love and will embrace the hexagon tool now. Thank you.
If they haven't already, it's a lot. I could see Leora in the screen. I was just going to say that appreciating how you've operationalized it. And I think Patty said earlier too, like how you've given specific examples for the scoring. I think that's so helpful. That's specific to universal screening to help with this process. And love the point that sometimes we have to de-implement. It's not just about implementation, but de-implement, and again, back to the pivoting that we continue to do. Before we switch up, just want to ask the group for any kind of feedback, questions about what you've just seen and heard. We'll have a chance to process in small groups, but anything you'd like to ask or explore more with Christina?
It looks like I just gave myself a compliment.
I know.
That's bizarre.
That's good.
It wasn't me. It was Patty, I think.
We have a question from Rhiannon. Are we able to get the specific screening tool adaptation for the hexagon tool? And you will receive, you'll have access to this slide deck as well for that. I don't know if you want to share more, Christine.
Yes, you'll have the slide deck for that. These are examples that I created, but these are what I've seen other districts do to pull from this. So happy to talk more about that or provide like a document example of what this looks like versus the slide. So just reach out and let me know what you need and how I can support.
Anybody else? A lot of times it's a lot of information to process, but we want to give you a chance to just talk this out a bit with each other. And we are committed to our SSPs. And so what we're going to do now is thinking about what you just heard and what you've just seen and worked through with the hexagon tool. In a moment, we are going to, or you should be able to see in a moment, the breakout groups for your SSPs or screening success partners. And so we're going to have you get into your SSPs. And Leora has also put in the chat questions of what, or questions to help guide your conversation about what it is you've just learned or heard. Everything from, in general, what are you curious about, wondering about, what concerns you about it, to sharing your own process. What is working for you? How are you selecting? And if you're not in that space, what are you thinking about? Or maybe you've already selected and now you're ready to pivot, whatever it is, wherever you're at, but really just sharing that with your small group. And then finally, how do we select the right tools that is right size for our community? So talking specifically about the communities you're serving and sharing that out. So as a reminder, your SSPs, group 1 is Siskiyou, Lassen, and Stanislaus. Second group is San Diego, Placer, and El Dorado. Third group is Santa Clara, Santa Cruz, and Yolo. And we'll definitely give you about 20 minutes or so to really spend some time in discussion and thought sharing. So just want to ask before we do that, any questions about the activity or anything we want to make sure we say before we break out? And just know, again, a lot of this is still processing. And as Christina put in the chat, there's more opportunities for office hours or TA. Just reach out at any time as well to kind of work through anything you're curious about. So we'll go ahead and pass it to Wayne.
Well, thank you, everyone. I think everyone received our updated plan template yesterday. We made some changes based on the feedback and the questions you guys have from the previous community practice meetings, also your input in all the other conversations. So one of the things we try to address is the description of multiple parallel planning efforts, as well as the nature that everyone is in different planning stages and start at different time, progressing at different rate. So one of the things we try to do is to add the program overview section. Some of you may have already took a look at that template already. We may put more emphasis on that section just to better understand where you are and to better understand what your next step will be. So we required that everyone provide at least an overview, either their proposed program or any changes that happened in the grant year 1. So if you have any changes, list them in the overview section. And also please provide us with, so my hope would be, or our hope would be that while listing your progress or the changes your program in the overview section, you also get to reflect on what happened in the past year and also make efforts to establish the next milestones for grant year 2 and 3. Through this process, we're hoping that it would benefit your team, making sure you're on track to submit a final plan, but also benefit us to know that you're on track to complete the grant years 3 final universal screening plan. So the more emphasis on that to the completion of the later part of the template is just so that we understand the nature of the planning efforts, and also to make sure that we are setting up structures that benefit you and benefit us. I think some of you may have already reviewed the template, so I have drafted a couple of slides to go over, or I'm open for any questions from our grantees about the template. Which strategy would our participant prefer? No preference? Okay, so I did draft a couple of slides. I'm happy to either talk through them. Would that work? Okay, I like that. And Should I share my screen to be able to share with everyone? Okay, let me see if I can share my screen. All right, so this is the template that we shared yesterday. The same section that we noted in the very front, understanding that this is acknowledging that we are going, well, everyone is at different stages, and we're hoping that this will serve a framework for overall screening plan in grant year 3. So we added some additional completion guidelines just to aid you through completing the first section of the template, which is the program overview section. Again, like I mentioned here, if there's no changes to your proposed plan in the grant year 1 period, you're welcome to include just a brief summary of your program goals. It will be helpful for us to know the context. What are we talking about about the first grant year? And if there are changes, as I mentioned here, please let us know the changes in goals, activities, scopes, timelines. In the later section of the overview section, we would appreciate if you include an updated timeline. And I understand this may take some time and effort, and I welcome and encourage you to reach out to our TCTs and the stack team to work through the details and see what is the most appropriate changes. And also, we listed here that we're requiring all grantees to complete the district level implementation checklist and planning guide. As we were talking earlier, I think we are also open for you to complete the flow chart that Christina worked on and revised. So we'll be making a formal communication for that. So please expect a future slightly revised version of the template, just with changes to specific language required about this particular checklist. And of course, overall, similar to what we said before, the later part of the template, we still prefer you to complete as much as you can. And I just wanted to remind you that please try to connect the original proposed plan to the activities described in. For each section of response, please try to connect the materials that you listed to the original proposed plan, or what you've mentioned in the program connect overview section, so we can see the connection in what you have achieved and what was proposed. Again, I think this is the section that we shared over in January after one of our earlier community practice meetings. The questions are the same and the guidance remains the same. Coming for this section, the page 3 is what I said, we added as the program overview section. Again, we're asking for either a summary of universal screening program or describe changes to the original proposed plan. Following this section, we're adding the checklist here, but again, as I mentioned earlier, we're open for another format that Christina created. From this point on, everything coming after that is the same as what we shared before. We're not anticipating everyone to complete it all the way till the end. Again, this is supposed to be a framework for what you submit in the end of grant year 3. Now, I think we're pretty much done with the template. Is there any questions that you guys have that I can answer?
A question. I'm wondering, in the way of the stages, or stage 2, the pre-pilot planning activities, or then even moving into stage 3, if our districts are in various stages of stage 2, stage 3, or stage 1, in the way of reporting for the preliminary plan, if we're in varying stages across all of this, do we just report in a general way or name each of the districts that are in various stages? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think that really makes sense. Initially, I think we had the earlier conversation that you would mention the parallel planning efforts in overview section that could probably fit the best. As for how much information to include in later section of the template, I think I'll give the freedom to you, as long as we have enough information to understand what has happened in the grant year one. Or I will leave the freedom to you to decide how much information. But I will note that part of our review process, we'll try our best to understand what you've provided, but we will likely follow up with the information that we couldn't. So part of that evaluation will be related to how complete your information is. And I wouldn't guarantee that what you provided will be sufficient, but we will let you know.
Okay, thank you. And I wanted to say thank you for the updates.
Of course, I'm happy to. I'm happy that you mentioned your nature. I think it's important that we take that into consideration.
Najwa, would you be open to closing us, speaking of taking a breath, and closing us with Amanda Gorman's words?
Yeah, my pleasure. All of us bring light to exciting solutions never tried before. For it is our hope that implores us, at our uncompromising core, to keep rising up for an earth more than worth fighting for.
I just want to name that on Friday, close to where Rachel and Mara and Heather are, 4 people landed from space into water. Like from space into water. And I just want to offer for any of us who are like, oh my gosh, I cannot get the superintendent to answer an email, or which screener is it going to be, or how do I use the hexagon tool? Space into water. Like that happened, So we can do things beyond our wildest imaginations. And I really want to invite you to check out Christina, one of the crew members' latest, when she was sharing about what it means to be a crew and a team. I'll send you that recording too. It's really quite profound. So may you have a really wonderful day. Thank you, Christina. Massive thank you to your teaching. Thank you, Tina. Thank you, Boyang, for your deep, deep dedication to this crew, and to Selena for your next steps.